essentially warped what you lost from being second seed versus GENG's first. So it's a huge win for them, a lot of relief. Now, we saw 3 jungle bans towards Peanut from GENG in Game 1, the Sejuani, the Vi, and the Maokai. Maybe if GENG want to drop the Maokai ban, that'll be the first hint they want to change up the draft. Maybe they feel like they could deal with Zeka's Smolder better if they leave it to them. We'll have to wait and see. I think on the side of Hanwha Life, if you want to ban it, you're going to replace the Nidalee.
Also, what is the takeaway from GENG? Because I would want to echo what Wadit was saying earlier. Effectively, GENG went with free scaling lanes, and they got away with it. But at the same time, it did kind of feel like Hanwha Life probably should have kept control of that game. The fact that Hanwha Life ended up winning it is a whole nother thing. After the first game that Hanwha Life won in the previous series, GENG did a complete pivot, and I really like this because I think that that is what they need to do here as well. This will open up the Vi for Peanut, but it means that we can get a completely different style coming out from GENG. Last time, I think it was the Kalista Blitz to come through, which we all know how that one ended. We'll see if GENG go for a similar level of pivot, and for Hanwha Life, they can just try and do what it did last game.
I'm really curious what this first pick is going to be. We knew the final ban was going to be that Ziggs, but we have confirmation now. As picking something like a Zyra first doesn't feel very strong in this position, they're going to go for the Ashe themselves. And after seeing Viper's damage in that last team fight, hard to blame them. Sejuani is banned, of course, so you don't have that synergy, but there's a lot of other picks here you could grab in second rotation here on blue side to pair with the Ashe in the bottom lane. For Zeka here and Peanut, we've seen so much synergy between these two players with Vi and another champion that sets up well. We've even seen Ahri a few times this season. But I wonder if they're going to try to keep it a little bit more unknown what their game plan is here, considering Canyon often shies away from said Vi. They pull out the Jhin here right away for Viper. One he played quite well yesterday, and the Azir looks to be the lock as well for Zeka. We didn't get to see it yesterday. It was banned against Faker every game. This time Hanwha Life, it's buffed on this patch. We'll grab it early.
An interesting choice, because Tristana is still very, very strong, and something you could imagine Chovy probably wants to lock in right here. The Skarner, another choice here for Canyon. Of course, he's really been loving this champion on this patch more recently, but the Zyra Ashe, baby, it is very, very powerful. They're the ones that are going to be employing it this time. Oh, Corki Azir. This is a very enthralling matchup for the mid lane that we are possibly getting set up for, but does mean that it's a solid core here for GENG to start us off.
First time in this series as the Azir Corki comes through. No surprise there, and this is going to already look completely different, right? We're looking at pressure lanes that are there now for GENG, both in mid as well as in bot lane. Jhin is good in trying to stave off the pressure, but I do think that Ashe should have the shove, depending on support matchup. Yeah. What I want to wonder as well is, are they actually... Yeah, I like this a lot more.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think that Vi really works with what you have so far, and the Ivern makes a ton more sense.
It's so oppressive into the Ashe because she's so low range, and you have the Jhin who can set up and brushes far away. It's difficult to punish him. It also gives you different angles for the Azir. He can set up soldiers outside of the brush while also having that added safety of being in the brush. It's very oppressive. It's very difficult to fight into. Now, Braum is a big concern. I think that will probably be banned away here again for Hanwha Life. We saw GENG ban it in Game 1 because the Ashe Braum lane is such a strong kill lane. Instead, they'll ban the Renata away. Interesting, especially considering they didn't go for that dive-heavy jungle pick of the Vi. The Renata ultimate is going to get so much more value. Leona is taken here in response. I still think that Braum deserves a look, though.
Yeah, Braum and Rel now needing a little bit of a look here, especially if you see an Alistar come in on 5 once again. It does mean that they do want to get rid of that, but instead, the Cassante just taking away one of those blind picks from Keen might be forced into handbag territory, as Renekton has been not looked at all this series thus far, and has been the other agreed upon blind pick top lane.
Would work out well with the Zyra, right? Trying to get that, not quite Nidalee level, but still works well to have the lockdown.
Bit of chain CC.
Yeah, exactly. And also when you combine it with the Ashe, I do think that that is a bit of power. It's interesting though, and it kind of echoes what we were saying, like the takeaway from GENG, play a lot more proactive. Takeaway from Hanwha is we could have very well lost that game. So we're still going to take away the blind Cassandra, even though I didn't really feel like Keen was a problem at the beginning, was able to find his way back and have some incredible team fights. And this would be something, and this means that I think Delight might be looking at a Bard again.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. You don't save counter pick here unless you're looking for a Bard. You just want to get confirmation as to what's coming through. Now, the Braum is left available. Feels very strong. Obviously, the level 1 is incredibly oppressive here for GENG's composition. Even outside of the lane on the map, you can look for picks here into this and maybe even make some of these champions skill into something they don't want to at level 1 if you do end up finding them out. So that one feels like a strong option, but it's Lehens. And he's got other ideas.
It's Lehens.
Yeah, it's got to be DeCrank.
Hanwha was like, no, he's never going to play something as stock standard as Braum Ashe. No way. We don't need to ban that. He would never play it.
I tell you what, Delight looks like a genius now, though, for saving that counter pick. Now he can get out of the way of this Blitzcrank a little bit more, as Ornn is going to be locked in. And I was wondering what they were going to do about this, because Blitz isn't exactly an engaged champion. Yes, if you land a hook, it kind of works, but more it's like a pick champion. So Ornn does give them some engage. It's going to be Delight locking in the cow, though, and it feels like this is a bit more of a stock standard composition. But once again, with these Azir comps that Life Esports put together, I don't necessarily see a lot of damage here unless they can really get on top of their opposition.
That's why Zeka has such a big role to play in this game, because his Azir is going to be the main source of long-term damage in team fights. Obviously, the Jhin can help zone. Renekton Jhin can be quite strong in a team fight because the Jhin can follow up on the Renekton engage from so far away. You obviously have the trigger seed from Peanut as well, so it's really easy to collapse on a single target that gets caught out. But Zeka is a player, and I feel like we haven't talked about this that much. We haven't really given him the credit he deserves. It was a player whose Azir we thought for so long was mediocre. We thought it was one of the reasons why there would be no way DRX could go to Worlds. There would be no way they could lift the World Championship trophy. I feel like he has improved so much as a player. This champion's now in his wheelhouse. He is a good Azir player now, but he has to be really good in this game, otherwise the damage isn't there.
On the flip side for GENG, that game 1 loss, they are the extremely heavy favorites. We have not, I think, had this lopsided of a feeling going into a series since, like 2023 spring? And we know how that one ended.
Yep, or like the last time they were in a final. Like, GENG are just really, really good.
They have been.
It's like kind of like, it's almost as if they're going for 5 LCK trophies in a row.
What would you call that?
A pentapeat. Or a 5-peat, or a back-to-back-to-back-to-back.
I do really appreciate the pentapeat.
Yeah, probably something like that, but it is now time to get into game 2, because you can't get a pentapeat without winning at least 3 games in this series right now, and they haven't won their first. Let's do it.
젠지 하나 둘 셋.
하나 생명 하나 둘 셋.
All right, here we are, ladies and gentlemen, onto the riff for game number 2. GENG looking to fight back against a game 1 loss. And this isn't unfamiliar territory. They fell down in game number 1 against Life Esports in their first match. And, well, in the last time that they met here in the playoffs. And it was the same story, and then GENG just went ahead and won 3 in a row after that. That was sort of how that went.
Yeah, it was I felt like back then we were also impressed with how Hanwha looked, you know, compared to what our expectations were. This is a similar situation. They had to clutch it out in the end, but it did look like they had a lot of power and should have been able to close that game out from the lead. They had some overextension, some poor calls led to that punish play from Canyon. Going into this draft, though, it's very different. The win cons are way less self-explanatory. Last time it's get your 80 carries ahead, especially Tristana, take turrets off the map, snowball the game. This time it's more about subtle objective setup. It's going to be a lot about team fights. It's going to be about the Azir engages, when Zeka goes in, and how much damage he can output in team fights. Because when this Corki Ashe gets to the late game, especially with ornaments, GENG's comp once again is the stronger scaling team.
I do also think that this hinges on the Doran and Peanut effect as well. Root Collar is so powerful when you have Renekton. The one thing he doesn't have is any ability to get on top of anyone in general, right? And Root Collar works as pretty decent engage to just deliver a crocodile to your opposition, which is generally, in their opinion, probably a bad thing, because crocodiles can be quite vicious. And Doran being able to get there in a moment's notice without having to use Slice and Dice to close the gap is going to be really, really important.
Do want to highlight that there is no lane swap this time around. I do actually really like the Ornn counterpick, or quote-unquote counterpick into the Renekton, because With Grasp, with Brittle, you actually have a good amount of trading power. You're obviously never going to have Prio. But it doesn't really matter, right? Because I think that Canyon is equally happy just farming up because he will actually outpace Peanut, even though Peanut early on obviously is going to have an advantage just because of the way that Ivan clears and might have a window there. But the main thing you want to do is enable this man, the Blitzcrank, Lahens. So Keen just being completely self-sufficient, and like even pre-6, I think it's tough as post-6. I just don't see you dying in a 2v1 dive. There are obviously scenarios where if you rotate up enough people, you can take down the Ornn, but it's going to be tough, and shockingly, Canyon is in fact here at the bot side of the map.
Yeah. HLE Esports have full information as to what's going on here. Peanut actually looking for a similar situation in the mid lane. Chovy playing very defensively, and it looks like Canyon not opting in for any sort of dive. Hanwha dealing with the wave quite well.
Now, on the top side, Peanut is going to be able to secure the scuttle, but it's really difficult to actually use Ivern into the Ornn, and you knew the Ivern was locked in when you had this Ornn pick to come through. They showed the Renekton early, so it's a fantastic pick in that regard. Let's see. I mean, Keen is pretty low here. Doran actually putting a lot of damage onto him, so maybe they can make something happen here. It's pretty tough.
Yeah, Peanut going to be hiding in a brush here. I have a feeling that Keen knows exactly what's going on as he holds the wave, making sure that Peanut has to tank the turret if he is going to walk past, and it looks like Peanut wants none of that. And Doran dealing with this wave in a pretty annoying position right now, but he's not under any threat, and I think has a bit of an idea that there is no Canyon around.
Let's talk about the 2v2 for a second here in the bottom lane. I mean, you can see a massive CS advantage. Viper was forced out of the lane. Didn't have to flash or cleanse, but losing all of that farm just from Canyon coming over and the oppressive power of Blitzcrank Ashe early. The slows could just lead to a hook, can lead to your death, can lead to you losing the game right away. He has to play respectfully, but this is a massive lead, and this is exactly what Ashe is going to afford you. She's also going to scale better into the late game as a true, real AD carry. So, you know, the cross map was a Scuttle Crab and looking at Keen. So, not looking great for Peanut in this early game thus far. It's been Canyon who's made the larger impact, and we've seen this happen a lot of the time when Canyon's playing the Zyra into the Ivern.
Also see here, a drive-by gank from Peanut. Of course, ganking on Ivern sometimes is just, they go for a trade and you pressure shield.
Yeah.
Chovy still able to keep the pressure up, as is expected. Zaka about a wave behind, not really anything to be too worried about. Same towards the top side, but it does really feel to me, even though I think that HLE will still have a good amount of threat late game, the mid game is where this comp spikes, right? Like you want Ivern on like an item or two, Jhin back or at the point where, especially if he can get ahead of the curve, if you're able to make a play with Zach or Peanut around maybe an early objective, that's when I think they're going to feel the strongest. Eventually, the amount of free gold that's going to come through from Keen, plus the fact that the natural tendencies of Renekton's, even with Ivern, I think it pulls him further into relevancy, but down the line, you're just going to get shredded, right? There's so much damage available on GENG as Canyon.
Oh, Flash does come out. A lot of respect there from Delight, but Canyon not quite finding the angles as Peanut looks to try and get some damage down. Good positioning from the HLE Esports jungler, but Canyon's still going to be able to start off this dragon. It looks like there's not going to be too much response.
Yeah, and unlike the last game, GENG has tons of prio bottom side. They have prio in mid, and even though Canyon's gank attempt there doesn't end up getting a kill, it gets a flash, and it guarantees they have that additional prio for the dragon. Tri-brush control means there's no way that Peanut can come back over here, and even without level 6 for the Zyra, there's just nothing that HLE Esports can do, and they don't even have to send Pays over. He is 1v2 in this lane, still pushing it in, and Keen's just soaking the pressure. And that CS lead here for the Renekton is really just not that significant.
What's also very poignant is that this is how the early game went for HLE, right? Like with that Zyra and Ashe combo specifically, able to get an incredible amount of early objectives going. Now Peanut, thanks to the prio they have on top side, is going to be able to get the grubs. Doesn't quite feel as impactful this time around though, because I do expect GENG to contest the second grubs, and I think they have a lot more tools now than they did in the previous game, but also because Tristana, and even I think again the Mordekaiser is really, really strong when it comes to pushing down those turrets inside. Yeah,
a little bit of a different story here as Keen still having a little bit of trouble here in Doran, as you would expect, especially given the sustain advantage. There is a Bramble Vest now complete, so Keen should be able to mitigate some of it, but Peanut, he's coming over. They're looking for an angle. Are they going to be able to find the snare? They do, but the Root Caller going to come in after the flash. Keen will be alive for now, but that's a big summoner.
Really good timing there from Peanut, because he goes in the moment that Keen uses his W to go for the trade. So knows that it isn't available, gets the flash. I actually really like the flash from Keen there, because you saw they can't really commit because they don't know where Canyon is. Canyon's here and the ult is available. Do they want to go for this? This is a Renekton, and I think they made the right call not to.
Yeah, I think, you know, Keen is not in any danger. You're able to come over here and confirm that Peanut is not actually diving a second time. There's no fear of getting a flashless Ornn blown up here. Ult's down for Doran. Just protect, make sure he's okay, allow him to stabilize, and move on. You already got the Dragon bottom side. You have that Drake lead, and your composition scales incredibly well. Chovy still maintains that very small half a wave of a lead. You know, it'll, of course, stack back up a little bit higher after this wave crashes here, but he's got his early game going smoothly. You've got the Ashe winning the way she's supposed to. The machine is well-oiled here for GENG with what this comp wants to do.
Want to highlight as well, Chovy actually going for Conqueror, which is definitely the one we see the least. It's mostly just been the fleet. And I imagine that we've seen how aggressive he plays this lane, literally starting at level 1.
Oh, arrow going to come through. Ah, the walk strategy. Happens once again here as Zeka just does that, and that's going to make everything K.
Also interesting, you know, talking about runes, we do see the press the attack here for the Azir for Zeka as well.
Yeah, that's
less common to see on the Azir, but I feel like very strong into this tanky front line of the Ornn. And he is, again, going to have to be a big damage dealer in these team fights. The Jhin is not really going to be able to alone break through that Ornn's tankiness. It's going to have to be the Azir a lot of the time, or he needs to just be hitting the squishies, which is not always going to happen into a team comp like what GENG has been put together. Down here, Peanut's just dropping a daisy as they're trying to get Viper some much-needed gold here.
Yeah, Viper is standing next to the pillar, which is a little bit dangerous, but I think if Keen was to use that Searing Charge aggressively, he would be in a lot of trouble given the proximity of the cow. He's going to back away, but plate going over to Viper.
Actually, nicely done there, because Canyon is showing. We saw that Humble Life did kind of have Zeka kind of shadowed move towards the bot side of the map. But I don't think there really was a dive opportunity there. Maybe if they catch Canyon right from the get-go, right, Zyra is very immobile, so if you do get on top of her, it's possible, but if she keeps her distance, trying to dive an Ornn, especially when the amount of damage you have available, not quite going to be there.
Yeah, now, once again, just like the previous game, they move Pays up to the top side of the map. They're setting up for the grub contest that you were talking about. You know, this composition isn't that strong with just 3 grubs. I mean, even with if you got 5 or 6, it's not the most oppressive grub composition we've ever seen. But given a Zero moment with the turret in the side lane, it can disappear. Then you got Sundis opportunities. GENG looking like they want to contest for this Canyon heading up. Keen does not have his teleport just yet, but it's coming online very soon. This is definitely a fight that looks like much more reasonable for GENG to take than the one they tried to take in Game 1 before their composition was online. And the Ornn, if he does show up to this fight, teleport's still not ready, then it's so hard for Hanwha Life to actually fight. It's such a strong early game ultimate for an otherwise, you know, relatively muted champion at this stage in the game.
Yep, I wouldn't mind it if Hanwha Life Esports just gave this up when even on the grubs and didn't try to throw things away at this point in time, but there is a big question that I do have for you guys, and that is, when is Hanwha Life Esports looking to fight? When is going to be that time where they hit that sweet spot of power spikes, or do they even have one against what GENG has here in this game?
Yeah, it actually is a little tough. I think you are just situations like this where you can get a man advantage and use the long range engage that you have available.
Not a lot of damage until Zeka gets here. He is finally going to come down. Bellow's Breath is fantastic. Even gets the train on in, but Keen is still going to die. And that is first blood going over to Zeka, exactly where they wanted the money.
Yeah, now you asked where they're going to fight. I wouldn't call this a fight, but it's a great macro read. They're able to say, okay, well, look, we're going to give up grubs. We don't have to set up to fight that, but we have the numbers advantage bottom side. We can get several things. Try to pick off Keen, get the shutdown kill onto, or not shutdown kill, but the initial kill, first blood, over to Zeka. He's the one who needs the gold the most. Plates and the Dragon are on the other side. Top side has plate or lane swap protection as well, so even though GENG get those grubs, they only go up to 3, and yes, they'll get some plate gold themselves, but there's a trade-up of money here for Hanwha Life. I think the only battle they could have fought was on the map, and they made the right call.
Yep, you can see that Peanut and Delight were just shadowing here as they were trying to take this bottom outer turret, but not actually going to draw Keen's attention just yet. He decides to give up on that. Doesn't want to take the risk because they're going to trade dragons 1-for-1 and trade turrets 1-for-1. First turret blood going over to GENG though, as they lock down that top outer.
Yeah, I imagine that they were looking to see if Keen was going to TP back in because they were hiding in fog. If he does TP, you're definitely diving again, especially with 4 people there. as we take another look, this is, I think, one of the big issues for GENG is that, again, Ornn in the side lane, eventually, if you have any one in the area, his re-engage, his stall can actually do a whole lot. You see, he actually has a good amount of damage.
Yeah, it was really well played.
Canyon's on the other end of the map, right? So Canyon, all he can do is just try to get the turret, which they do end up getting. But a kill going over to Zeka specifically, given his heroics in last game, obviously gonna feel great. But additionally, getting a lot of extra resources on the only AP carry of your team is always gonna feel great because it makes the itemization for the enemy team a lot harder.
And I think there's not really a great answer to your question, Atlas, about when should they fight, because in terms of item spikes, obviously the Zero is going to be very good on 2. The first item he gets the Nashers to, that's going to give him a lot of damage, but it's more of a all-around item that's going to be useful in side lanes. It's just, in general, basically the strongest item a Zero can pick up, so he's obviously going to get that one first. The Jhin doesn't really have a strong spiking moment in this meta. He's obviously more utility, so it's not about his damage output. I think you always want to take every favorable fight you can find, and you want to find them as soon as possible. So fights like the last one, or picks like the last one that we saw on Dekeen, making the right decision on the map, setting up for objectives at the right time, and utilizing your brushes, and trying to take unfair fights before Chovy comes online, before this Ashe comes online, is really not quite the answer to your question, but I think Hanwha best bet is we're starting to feel like GENG have a pretty massive lead here. It's only 300 gold, but because of the scaling and how they've been able to weather the storm and how well the Ashe did early as she's supposed to, the Hanwha are really the ones who have the ball in their court. They have to make the next proactive play.
So GENG, I think, when they have space, will be heavily benefiting. You can poke away with the Zyra, with the Ashe, with the Corki. And as tools to create space, it really is going to come down to how can Canyon position. And also, what can Lahens do? Because one of the things with this Blitzcrank specifically is that ideally, you want to have an impact early on. We obviously haven't seen that. And we've seen Lahens carry plenty of team fights and mid-games as well. And it feels like GENG are also going to be trying and cheat some of the fights here just by getting a hook on. At this point, I think realistically anyone, obviously the best would be Viper, Zeka or Peanut, as the other ones can backfire a little bit. We'll have to see as GENG do have prio where they need it and are starting up this Herald, but there's the TP.
Yeah, it looks like Hanwha Esports, they've decided that now is when they want to start fighting. Decent buffer on the slice there from Doran as the Dominus does come on through. Lahens going down extraordinarily low, but so's the Crocodile, and he's going to fall first. The train drives through, but Canyon's already dead. There goes the Blitzcrank as well as the Ornn's starting to get amongst it. Delight has been tanking a decent amount as Pace just rockets out of there. Chovy should be able to get over this wall, though not quite enough with the Phosphorus Bomb to be able to take that one down, but he just taxis his way through, and Delight is going to be A-OK. Viper with the shield from the Trigger Seed. As Peanut getting in a little bit of trouble. Pays can't tank up the turret by himself. And it is going to be a 2-for-2 in the end, I believe.
It wasn't really the exact fight that Hanwha was looking for. They thought the teleport angle there was going to be enough, but GENG sussed it out instantly. The arrow comes through from Pays, and even though it's buffered by Doran, he finds himself isolated. He needs the ability to zone more, and there needs to be a faster follow-up because he's so disconnected from this fight. Look at how disconnected Hanwha are in general. Zeka's in the top lane. He's not able to get access. Peanut's nowhere near Doran. Sure, he has some time with his Dominus. He can buy a little bit of time here, but the fight is so broken up. Hanwha have Delight's counter engage here, so they're able to isolate Canyon. Zeka does a decent amount of damage, but then he can't win the fight. In the longer fight, of ultimate from Viper isn't going to be enough damage, and Zeka had to go so deep to get that kill that he's just in no man's land.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about Pace's gate, and by not so sure generally in my phrasing means not good. Don't do that.
Was that he didn't click on the right part of ground?
No, so
ground has gate?
I mean, I don't think so. I think it was just genuinely like trying to cut off because they think realistically thinks the light is dead, right?
It is one of those things where it's like,
well,
it's hard to do it really accidentally.
Well, if you have Arrow also, then maybe it works. But like Viper and Peanut both have summoners, have a lot of kiteback potential, so I don't think you're ever going to catch them. What I really liked there was Viper, his patience with using his ultimate. I think a lot of Jins would just immediately start firing, and I think it's something we saw in the series against T1 as well. Waited for the Ornn to actually hard commit to the main part of the fight before he started setting up the guns there. Still, when everything is said and done, GENG were the one that got the Herald, and the trades were even. So I don't think either team is going to feel too strongly about it one way or another.
It does feel, though, Chronicler, though, that trade that's even is a trade up for GENG
in these
situations. Yeah. And obviously with the Herald, they get a little bit more map control as well on top of that. And Hanwha Life, had they been a little bit faster to respond, or if Doran teleports a little bit later when they're actually closer for follow-up, I think this could have been a fantastic fight for them. And those are the kind of angles you have to fight. You have to cheat your way through these team fights in a big way, I think, at this stage in the game. And we're not able to make it work in a very confident, or rather, a very decisive way. So GENG are probably feeling very good about the outcome.
Well, hook onto Daisy.
That's mean!
That is so mean. It is a fair bit of money.
It's good.
For GENG.
It's a very good hook.
Yeah, it does make a lot of sense, especially Peanut had just used it. The chain CC lands on top of him, the Ivan. Oh, they just took down his best friend, and then they cut him down as well. Another hook, and that is the Azir. The main character of Hanwha Life Esports is just dead, and there's no way they're fighting this one, as the Dragon will go down as well. The second one for GENG, the first Hextech Drake of this series.
And where game number 1 was an extremely high-paced and kind of frantic affair, this feels like classic GENG, right?
Oh, yeah.
We're waiting, we're biding our time, but when we see an angle, we'll take it.
It's decisive, and we've had some questionable driving from Lehenge throughout the year, but those two were pretty good as he crashes in, takes out the mid turret, and then the follow-up. And obviously in this angle for the arrow, it's very difficult for Peanut to react quickly enough to flash it. But if he does flash it, I think this is a very different situation. They will actually get to have some modicum of a team fight here. Well-deserved, celebration here from Lehenge.
Yep.
You can see the pressure of losing that game 1 has definitely not gotten to him.
Yeah. When Lehenge isn't cackling, you know that this is a series where there's still a lot of tension.
Yeah, he knows that was a great moment, so you still get the woo. But yeah, there is not the wild guffaw, because it still says 0-1 at the top of the screen. GENG gonna have to even things out, bring us to a best of 3.
But now
taking a win here, but we are getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. 2,000 gold is a good lead.
Yeah.
Dragon advantage with a great soul, also fantastic, and they win neutral fights in general. Hanwha Life Esports are gonna have to find some angles here away from some of these hooks.
They have a real control over the game now. Like, they are now in the driver's seat. They are pointing the ship, right? And I think Hanwha Life did find some way to rock it. 2 items for the Azir. You have a lot of great ways to set up fights.
Oh, once again onto Peanut. The hook is going to connect onto Delight, and he's going to use that to taxi forward. The Blitzcrank, certainly not very tanky, but neither is Delight, as it turns out. Redemption to keep him alive, but it's Pace just raining frosty bullets into his backside. And Daisy will once again fall down. This is a 1-for-1 this time, both of the supports falling down. As a teleport in from Zeka, he just wants to take as much money on this map as he can find.
There are ways to blow up single targets, and there are ways for Zeka, if they get map control, to set up for flank angles, to set up for engages.
There's no turrets.
Oh dear. Yeah, there are a lot of bad guys coming, and Zeka does not have a lot of friends on the way outside of Peanut. The flash forward from Chovy. Oh, doesn't get slowed down by the volley. Good sidestep there, as now it might be Peanut going down yet again. He does get the brush for Zeka, who's trying to play it out. Pays almost falls, but it's Zeka that goes down in the end. Delight realizing there's no follow-up, there's no angle, as Lehenge versus Viper, from best friends to enemies, and he is going to let him live.
He let him live. That's camaraderie right there.
It's beautiful, it's mercy.
I just think it's because Viper is one of those sprinting Jins.
Yeah, well, he
definitely wanted to go fast Jins.
He's quite known to be a very high-paced, long-distance Jin runner.
Let's not forget, this is a man that has a rift named after him, okay? And he's got the Swifties.
He did, yeah, he quoted the drift. That is very true.
I mean, this is just a Lehenge thing, right? We always see these setups, whether it's Maokai, whether it's the Ash Arrow. He's always trying to fish for those setup hooks, but he's not very tanky. He does go down. The problem is, Paze is an 80 carry, and Viper's not in this moment. He has way more damage output. Yeah, Viper can try to stop these retreats, but Zeka cannot close the gap, cannot get in there, so it just doesn't matter. It ends up being a trade.
And then we go to this topside play where GENG really want to commit. Keen tries to keep Peanut away from Zeka. Pace actually almost ends up going down. I think the Vamp Scepter and the Red Buff will barely keep him alive, otherwise could have very well dropped, in which case, this is still a heavy investment, right? Both Chovy and Pace end up flashing, and Zeka holds his, and not having flash on the Ash, I think is actually a big deal. I kind of wonder if Pace shouldn't have just ended up going down there, like you trade 1-for-1. Might have actually been better. We'll see if he is able to play the team fight, but that's a lot of playmaking potential for Zeka now there that wasn't there before.
Yeah, I think the shutdown was what he was most concerned about. Like, he was going to give a ton of gold over
that's very true.
If he does end up dying. But, I mean, Zeka's already on 2 items, so it is one of those things where we'll have to wait and see whether it matters or not. If he ends up being caught when he could have flashed, we'll definitely say yes.
The train is going to come through. Gets the knock up as the arrow not going to connect this time around. Peanut able to move over it. That ward working out their full vision of the arrow the entire time. And Viper, of course, was standing next to it, so that sort of helps.
That's 2 cooldowns down, though, with 35 seconds about on this Dragon. And again, we haven't talked about the Dragon as much. It's Hextech Drake. There is a Nazir, a Corki, a Zyra, and an Ashe in this game. It's
and honestly, Jin kind of abuses the lightning really well.
Yeah, even that. So obviously can't really be given over. One look at the item spike. So this is what we were talking about earlier. Moonstone now done for Peanut as well. This should be a big fighting opportunity. I know Hanwha Life right now are behind in gold, but I do think they're really, really strong. Sterix on Renekton as well. Doran is level 2 off the ultimate. And Doran hasn't really been able to have an impact yet. I think he needs to step up big. Him or Zeka needs to get on top of Paze.
Yeah, they need to get a pick. They need to kill the Ashe or the Corki. It's so difficult with Valkyrie. I mean, if they can punish Paze's lack of flash, we'll have our answer about that question in the top side. But I think Hanwha Life only get 1 or 2 more of fights like this where it feels like they're still strong. It feels like they still have the advantage. So they needed to seize the opportunity here, but they don't have prio. And as you can see, Lehends is just holding the door here. 1 hook, and the fight's over.
Yeah, Keen has started upgrading some items here as well. So those masterworks are going to keep coming in, those ornaments being constructed. As we do have a start on this one, there's a lot of terrain for that arrow to fly through, and there it is, it appears onto the cow. Doesn't even press the R button, does Delight, so that is not really what they were looking for. Hanwha Life Esports had an inkling on the plate. Doran looking for a flank angle. As there's the curtain call. We have the Dominus come through as well, conjoining into that backline. The Emperor's Divide is decent, but they're being cut apart. And yes, they get the Corki, but at what cost? And the answer is, yeah, everything.
Literally everything. They lose the fight, they lose Soul Point, and it looks likely they will now lose the Baron. And it's a very disjointed fight there from Hanwha Life Esports. Keen has the ult out, does a lot of zoning, and even though the arrow missed, you have to be so cautious, so careful about how you're going to engage, and it felt like Hanwha just didn't have a great plan. Delight didn't ult in the last fight, didn't feel pressured by the arrow, but still took a lot of damage, and it was difficult for Hanwha Life to turn there, and they forced it anyways. And Corki dies, sure, but like you said, they lose basically everything. And this might be the defining moment in this second game where GENG tie us up.
I think that's going to be it. And you see how well aware GENG is. And crucially, the ults actually end up being fine, right? They used them both, didn't get the pick on Peanut before. But Keen still gets a double knock-up and gets a free man then. Just to make sure. And I want to be clear, like, Paze didn't get swept up. I think that fight looked rough nonetheless. But that really just turned it from not just a one fight, not just a Dragon, but straight up Baron, and what is most likely going to be the backbreaker here for Hanwha.
Yeah, and so Keen basically just won the game at a 50 CS deficit, not necessarily having a great time in lane. It doesn't matter. You know, when these compositions that are constructed just work a lot better as a cohesive 5-man unit, it just, you can see that it's so hard for Hanwha Life Esports to find these plays because the onus is on them to make the play, to walk into GENG, who have the range advantage, they have the poke advantage, and they have so many ways to respond as well. As another arrow is going to fly in. This one straight between the goalposts. Not going to be able to find too much more there. As Hook going to connect onto the cow, and Delight going to need to use the Unbreakable Will this time, but I don't know whether it's going to be enough. Thankfully, the curtain call is going to be there, and that does play some interference. Chovy just happily taking these shots, though it's just not doing that much.
But now you'll have your curtain call to really defend the siege, and Chovy's wrapping around. He's starting to put those arrows, and here comes the Ornhorn.
Yep, the train is going to come on through once again. Good double knockup comes down, but the redemption is there to keep them healthy once more. It's an N for no, do not push in. That's what those brushes were saying. And Peanut is going to get his wish for now, but I just don't think that GENG are beholden to him right now.
It's going to go down, but it's still a decent stall from Hanwha Life. The main thing is trying to deny the opportunity for GENG to actually take down inhibitors. But I think compared to game number 1, where even with the smolder we felt like there was a real angle for Hanwha, I think this time around, that just doesn't feel as realistic. They can't afford to lose a single fight around Dragon from this point forward, right? Just because of the fact that GENG is already sitting at 3. Now, Paze has his masterwork, so does Canyon. And this is going to get harder and harder here for Hanwha Life as these fights start to feel more and more lopsided. And again, Doran, I don't think he's had a lot of opportunities, but the couple of TPs that we saw just didn't really get anything done. And it makes you wonder, should we not just have picked the support for Delight and saved counterpick for Doran after his game one was quite good?
Yeah, I really think that that's certainly a question that the coaching staff is asking themselves right now backstage, because you ended up also losing out in this bottom lane to the Ashe, right? The Blitzcrank pick worked a treat. There's so much repression there. And this draft here for Hanwha Life just really doesn't hit the mark unless it snowballs the game. And arguably, almost more so than what we saw in game one, but in a very different way. Not in terms of killing structures and killing turrets and trying to get the Tristana ahead, but you need to actually win team fights. You need to be oppressive on the map. Once you lose control, Baron goes down. Now GENG go, yeah, we get set up for the vision.
Possible angle here, but this is a very tanky Keen, able to walk his way through the Emperor's Divide. The Stranglethorns comes in, the rest of GENG, they're making their way over, but it's just not quite in time. They'll take a consolation daisy, but they still lose their top laner, as Lahens takes a bunch of damage here from the curtains. As the Dragon's up in 48 seconds, just not quite enough to give them an advantage.
That's the problem. If they can get the continuation of that fight and actually use the fact that Keen isn't there, I think maybe that can make it, you can make that work. But instead, you use a ton of ultimates, and you don't even get what you need. You don't get the Dragon.
Yeah, and GENG used a lot of ults too, but their composition is way less reliant on them than Hanwha Life's are. You need that Gen ultimate, you need the Emperor's Divide, or you're just not going to win these fights. I mean, you still have the Dominus, but even your Alistar is food here for GENG. If we see a hook come through, if a pick comes through on the Delight, that's as good as Dragon here for GENG. And Keen has teleport here. As soon as he spawns, he can join, and there it is.
Yeah, Doran out of dashes here for the moment, as the teleport does come on through here for Keen. Doesn't have the Call of the Forge God. That is, like you say, Chronicle, the most important thing for this fight as far as Keen is concerned. No Stranglethorns either. Was used towards the end of that little skirmish. But the arrow is up, and it's going to be thrown straight into Zeka, who's in Fog of War. There is a brush there to make sure that he is not going to be seen. Finally, they get a control ward through, but now, will it be Hextech Soul, which is probably game, or will it be a one-team fight finally for Hanwha Life Esports? Already Keen going down very, very low as Jovi trying to cut up Doran, and Doran just can't do anything. He's kind of a handbag in this one. They do manage to take down the Dragon in exchange for the Crocodile. It's a reptilian bargain, but I don't know whether it's going to work, because it looks like after the deal is done, GENG trying to close this one out. The train does get one knockup, but not onto the priority target as Zeka in the brushes once again. He has Emperor's Divide, but he uses, Emperor's Escape instead. And that is going to get him out of there. The Cow not so lucky, and GENG, they don't get the Dragon, but they don't lose too much.
Heist successful for Hanwha, and the main question now is that enough? It's going to give you another opportunity, but you're going to have to get a couple more of these. Not just the Dragon, but the fights. But you're going to want to get the most out of this, fight your way back into this game.
Yeah, because the thing about this is we go back all the way to this play here to catch Keen. He buys a ton of time, but ultimately does end up going down. But what's more important here is how this Dragon fight goes. And I think the major part of the Dragon fight here was that Hanwha Life were like, okay, we got to pick. We need to get some sort of pick, otherwise we can't win this Dragon fight. We won't be able to deny the soul. Doran buys so much time, and GENG have to balance. Do we let Hanwha Life and Doran collapse on us here? Do we just keep him at bay and then let them have the Dragon? Because they can't push into those brushes and avoid Doran, and he's gonna sandwich them. So they have to kind of keep him zoned out here, and this allows Hanwha Life to secure the Dragon. But what they get more is a kill here onto Doran, and they're able to take out that inner turret. So they pick up a ton of gold, additional map control, and most importantly, Baron Prio. As Baron is now spawned, those ults are coming back online. Hanwha are in big trouble if GENG get this one with a 7,000 gold lead.
I do think it's as good of a sequence as you're going to get, right? Like, really push the edge. Doran is level 16. You trade him for a Dragon, that's definitely worth. It's just not enough. Pays now, double sums, IE done. We saw the amount of damage Viper was able to output in the last fight, and Hanwha Life, they're going to need to find a miracle if they want to get their way back, because you can see GENG, they're looking towards that Baron. They have so much vision set up here, and into a Blitzcrank, Hanwha Life are going to have to take some risks.
I mean, Ashe has Flash. You know, Pays has Flash and Cleanse. Toby's got Valkyrie, and now he's got his upgraded ornament as well. They have full map control. They have full vision control here over this Baron, or they will once this final ward is cleared by the Hens. And Hanwha Life are fighting into Blitzcrank hooks with Blind. Then there's no great target. All summoners are up. Not one player on GENG does not have Flash. Like, they all have it.
And it's 110 CS ahead for Canyon here. So this Zyra is very, very scary. If comparison to this Ivern, whose Daisy is once again getting bullied out. The Renekton looking for a position and angle here for Doran, does have his flash available. And of course, Peanut, a lot more facilitative, but it's just a lot more money that GENG has access to in this game. You can see 6,000 gold is their advantage. And just slowly but surely, GENG in these neutral fights are just pushing them further and further away from the objectives that Hummerlife want to be fighting around and for.
I mean, the Ivern doesn't really have that much value in this late game unless you have a brawling or late game hyper carry, right? Usually this pick came into existence because we saw 2 80 carry meta and 2 scaling 80 carries, not Jhin and not Azir. Even if it is press the attack Azir with Leandri's, he's on 3 items, but you still just aren't getting that much value out of the shielding. His Daisy is constantly getting hooked by Blitzcrank. Lehends is just taken out of the fight, so he's basically just a tree. He's not a champion. He won't get hit by this arrow at least, but GENG are just saying, come at me. You give up Baron, we win the game. You try to fight us without vision, you lose the game as well.
Hummerlife is still stalling, and we'll see if that is going to be enough. GENG, it looking like instead of actually pulling the trigger on the Baron and risking a flip, they are just going to play for the Dragon, which obviously is a lot lower in terms of risk. I think, again, Hummerlife, and we keep saying this, they got one shot, right? 4 item now done for Viper.
That's a big one.
Peanut also has the McKills, which takes away a lot of the plays that GENG have set up until this point, where Ash Arrow into follow-up with McKills. That's going to be a ton harder, but I think that Keen, to me, his ultimate is one of the big issues that I don't think Hummerlife have an answer for. That Ornn ult is not really something you can do too much about. In GENG, they can just send one member over to the Dragon, or they can even trade Baron for Dragon and not care. This is only soul point for Hummerlife, not the actual Hextech soul.
Exactly. And again, they have full vision here over the Baron. Hummerlife always have to consider that it could be being started at any moment. They always have to kind of try to check, and they've been using Daisy a lot to try to do just that. Morel Namicon coming through here for Canyon. He is also so big at this stage of the game, and his damage when you try to fight into these plants is definitely something that Hummerlife will feel. Hummerlife have successfully at least bought time to be able to contest this Dragon or maybe trade, but again, it's not enough. It's not a fair trade. They now have Cryo on the Baron.
Arrow going to sail through once again. Delight just going to McHale's, and he is going to be A-OK.
The poke, though.
That was Peanut that utilized his there. I was wondering where it came from. Delight is sitting there with a Warmogs, and he can't activate that to get out of CC. It does hold on to his ultimate. That is the important part.
You gotta go.
You gotta go. You have to fight, but you're cut off. You have no mid prio.
Yep, Doran knows exactly what's going on, but what is one Croc supposed to do against this one? He presses the dominance, but Hummerlife Esports are just a little bit too late, and that is going to be the Hextech Soul to come in. Doran is executed, and in they go. The hook is going to connect. Zeka goes golden, but that only buys a couple of extra seconds. The Emperor's Divide was by 0, I'm pretty sure, in that instance there. And now they're going to move on over towards this Baron and try to take that one down. Keen looking for a little bit more as Peanut will get knocked off the gate. And he is going to be able to take it here. But that is not going to stop this Baron from going down. Viper doing some sneaky stuff here, walking away, and is going to be able to take down a bountied up turret. The Baron is still going to be secured, and GENG, I don't think, mind about this Jhin going behind enemy lines.
Yeah, maybe he gets a second turret bottom as well with no TPs here for GENG, but I just don't think they care that much. They're going to use their empowered recalls to go back and stop him anyways. He's not going to be able to get away with it. And it's just GENG again punishing the indecision here upon Hummerlife. As Doran has dominance, right, but the engage is just not there. Delight is zoned out. He can't actually get on top of the targets he wants to hit, and then they just go straight to Doran. Lehends hooks over the wall and takes Zeka out, and he just makes some leap for joy, as it looks like this one is going to 1-1, as there's just nothing Hummerlife could do in this. I'm your big bro. I'm your young.
Yeah.
There we go. Slowly, Lens is getting a little bit more confident, as we'd expected.
Lehends.
Yeah.
Lehends indeed.
What we want to highlight as well is when we go way back, you see how much space GENG is just able to create consistently, right? Because there is so much CC and so much damage available. If you overstep,
Daisy!
already,
Oh, Arrow once again going to be collected, but it's Peanut that's in trouble. He's isolated. Another hook! This time onto the Crocodile. The Sterix does nothing because he just can't move. And GENG there will be able to take down the top laner. That's going to buy them so much space. This base is just not going to last very much longer.
I mean, if you get slowed, he's going to hit that hook every time. And you have Hextech Soul.
And he's sliced to get out of the way as well, and then got hooked. There's no way he can do anything.
It's just doomed. It's just doomed in this one.
And the first inhibitor turret is going to go down. Inhibitor very short to follow. Minion waves prepared earlier here for GENG are now taxiing towards both flanking turrets here. And Humble Life Esports, is there anything? Is there any angle? The thing is, I just don't see it. I don't see what they're supposed to do in this situation. Another arrow going to be soaked by Peanut. The tree is felled once again. The cow follows suit. The pigeon's down. And Viper just has to look on in horror as his menagerie is destroyed. And the Nexus is going to follow. Ladies and gentlemen, in this grand final, it's turning into a best of 3 as GENG clap back, and they clap back hard.
Looking at this game and game number 1, I imagine both teams are going to be looking at the jungle matchup specifically. I think Peanut and Canyon have had back-to-back games where they are the one calling the shots. They are the ones that have the playmaking potential. And that 1-2 of Ashe Zyra specifically gives you both bot lane prio while simultaneously with the Zyra allowing you to outpace basically any other jungle because Nearly keeps getting banned. And both the Ivern and I think the Skarner as well just weren't able to stand up to that early power.
Now remember, because Hanwha Life won game 1, they now have the opportunity to have advantage in terms of having that blue side even potentially in game 5, and they'll get their first blue side draft of the series. So draft is very important in this one. I think this draft really didn't hit. Of the drafts we've seen here in Gyeongju this week from Hanwha Life, this weekend, I think this one has been by far the weakest. And I think we'll see a lot more opportunity for Hanwha Life when they have blue side. They have that first pick, and they don't have to ban the Rumble away. They don't have to ban the Ziggs on red side, leaving them with only the Nidalee ban. I think there's a lot more options for them going into game 3. This game for me felt like almost entirely was decided by draft.
And so far, it seemed like the more threats you have on your composition, the more flexible it is going to be. Hanwha Life Esports, they took away a bunch of those threats, and it didn't work, and we'll see what they can find as they head back to the drawing board. It is break time, then the space, then we'll have game number 3. We'll see you there.
풀만 빼자 풀만.
얘 클린지 받았어.
클린 받아. 이거 나는 탑 바로 라인 보고 올게. 알리 돌았을 수도 있다 근데.
알리 안 보인다.
이쪽은 안 돌았어.
나 알리 미대 뒤에 와드 해놔.
나 이러고 탑 라인 들어갈 때 궁 한번 봐볼게.
저는
이제 들어가. 오케이 나 궁 7초.
여기 체크돼? 뭐야? 오케이. 알리 아래.
얘도 없고 나 이거 앞에 자리 잡아줄게.
오케이. 나 아직 한번 봐볼게. 아직 만다. 이거 리파이 못한다. 리파이 못한다 이러면.
알리 W 없어.
딱 레벨 줘.
타워.
겐 노플.